You know, life is like a Bollywood movie. There is drama, there is betrayal, there are heartbreaks, villains lurking in every corner. And just when you think the hero is down and out, the ultimate comeback. Hi, my name is Arunima Jha. I'm a lawyer by profession. And if my life were to a Bollywood movie, I would be a hero. Not the sidekick, not the comic relief, but the full-fledged slow motion walking, dramatic music playing entry, against all odds surviving hero. The only problem, for years I did not realize it. I thought if I worked hard enough, if I stayed quiet enough, and if I gave enough of myself, that I would belong. But here's what no one tells you about toxic workplaces. They want you to stay just small enough, just desperate enough, just scared enough to never ask for more. I struggle like any first generation lawyer, stepping into a world where connections often mattered more than competence. No godfathers, no easy door openings. Just my own grit, determination, resilience, and a willingness to take on anything that came my way. I started from ground up. Litigation, contracts, corporate law, endless late nights, impossible deadlines. Work-life balance was a myth. Just like Mumbai auto rickshawalas always having change, and Delhi winters without pollution. Sounds nice, but doesn't exist. And of course, I had bosses straight out of villain lineup. The one that thought employee wellness is an inside joke, and an unpaid overtime is a company policy. So I did what I'd always done. I worked, I delivered, and I survived. For nearly a decade, I climbed the ladder the hard way. Not because somebody handed it to me, but because I built it myself. And when I was finally hired as a leader, it wasn't because they recognized my leadership from day one. They hired hands, not a mind. They needed someone to do the groundwork, to set up processes, build systems that they hadn't thought through. And I did exactly that. I set up a compliance framework for them. I set up a team for them. And I fought battles to protect the company's interest. So without realizing it, without even intending it, I became the leader they never saw coming. Not because they handed me that position, but because I became too invaluable to ignore. But you know what? Here's the thing. When they do not acknowledge your worth from the beginning, they truly don't respect it even after you prove it. And that's what exactly happened. I wasn't just building my own career, I was helping others to build theirs. I wasn't just working within the system, I was fixing gaps. I was bringing real value. I was making things better. But instead of celebrating that, they began to see me as a threat. You know, they say, do not bite the hand that feeds you. But what do you do when the hand which is feeding you is the one thing that is keeping you caged? You break free. Because success does not come from waiting to be chosen. Success comes when you choose yourself again and again, even when no one else does. You know, when I finally built the legal team, I wasn't just hiring, I was giving an opportunity to others that I never had. The company had no idea, no plan, no vision what the legal department would look like. So I built it brick by brick, putting in the foundation for something strong and lasting. You know, the company wasn't really willing to invest in real talent because when, they did not have the budgets. So when budgets are low, you do not hire the best talent, you hire whoever you can get for the cheapest price, right? But I still did not look at them as cost-saving hires. I looked at them as people waiting for an opportunity to be given. An unpaid intern, I paid her from my own pocket. A team member who stuttered, I ensured that his voice is not dismissed. A team member who froze under pressure, could not close or negotiate a single deal. I covered for her and never made her feel small. And just when I thought I had given everything to this job, the betrayal started. They say a candle loses nothing by lighting another candle. But sometimes people who benefit from your light, they don't want others to see it. And that's okay. Because if you ever find yourself in a position where you can help others, do that. Not because it looks good or it benefits you. Do that because you know how exactly it feels to be the one person waiting for an opportunity that never comes. And if you're someone who's still waiting for that opportunity to be given to you, remember this, that you don't need permission to be great. Sometimes life won't even give you a fair chance. Sometimes you have to do it all alone. Build your own team, develop your own skills, carve your own space. And that's okay, because once you do it, the real people will see you for what you are. Not just a worker or a name on the payroll, but a force that refuses to be ignored. I wasn't just working. I was seeing something beyond my job title. I saw something big, a massive gap in legal awareness. I saw people who were tricked, fooled, and taken advantage of simply because the contracts they didn't read, the laws they could not understand, and the rights they didn't know. So I could not ignore it, and I started talking about it on my social media platforms. I started writing about it on LinkedIn. I wasn't selling anything. I wasn't promoting anything. I was doing it all for free. I even took on pro bono cases for complete strangers. Because, helping others shouldn't just be restricted to those whom we personally know. And then that became a problem. I was suddenly being invited to colleges to teach. The brands were awarding me for my contribution. My social media grew because people found value in it. But instead of being celebrated, I was targeted. Because in a toxic work environment, your growth is acceptable only till the time they can control it. At first the warnings were subtle. Why are you spending so much time on social media? Why are you writing about these things on LinkedIn? And then it escalated. A PR person was assigned to spy on me. My every single post was being monitored. And then the restriction started. I was stopped from writing on LinkedIn even when it was about leadership skills, business acumen, and industry insights. I was stopped from attending award functions even when I was invited in my personal capacity. Here's the thing. In a toxic work environment, it is not about the work or the company or the policy. It is always about control. The moment you show, you show ambition beyond their expectation, they do not admire you, they resent you. They say a bird in a cage thinks flying is an illness, and that's exactly how toxic workplaces operate. They don't stop you because you're doing something wrong. They stop you because you remind them of everything that they have never dared to do themselves. And the people who truly value you, they won't clip your wings. They will give you the space to fly, right? I then realized that it wasn't the company. It was one particular leader in the system. Someone so deeply insecure that they thought that if I grew too much, they will become irrelevant. And in a world where power is built on keeping others small, they did what all insecure leaders do. They tried to crush the one person they couldn't control. I wasn't an employee to them. I was now a reminder of their own limitation. And then came the ultimate test. They asked me to engage in something unethical. I had two choices, of course, a defining moment. I could have said yes, played along and saved my job, or I could have done what I've always done. So I stood my ground and I said no. I knew the risk, I knew the consequences, and sure enough, the real trouble began. The warnings got harsher. My name was left out of important emails. Meetings were held without me. And the most painful part, the people whose job I had saved, the same people, were suddenly too scared to be seen even having a cup of a coffee with me. And then one day, without any prior notice, I was called into a room. My laptop was snatched from my hand. I panicked. And just like that, I was terminated. And the reason they told me, you don't fit into our culture. Seriously, after 3.5 years of giving my determination, my skills, my life to this job, I suddenly don't fit in. I then realized it was never about fitting in. It was about ensuring that I do not outgrow the role that they had put me in. They say the nail that sticks out gets hammered down. But do you know what happens to the nail that refuses to bend? It becomes the foundation for something unshakable. And that's the thing about thinking differently. The moment you start questioning unfairness, you challenge outdated norms, and you start standing up for yourself, you will make some people very uncomfortable, and that's okay because comfort has truly never built revolutions and silence has never changed the world. You know, thinking differently, it makes people uncomfortable. It challenges outdated norms and it forces change. And change, it terrifies those who benefit from keeping the things same. So the next time if someone tells you, you don't fit in, say thank you. Maybe, just maybe, you were not meant to fit in. You were meant to build something big, something better. You know, the next 30 days were really brutal for me. The job market was down. Recession was real, and for the first time in my life, I was all alone because I had taken a stand for myself. And that's when I realized something worse than being terminated, the fear of honesty in corporate culture. I walked into interviews open and honest about what had happened. I told them that I had been let go of because I refused to compromise my ethics. And some companies hated it. They were looking for someone who would stay quiet, they will follow orders. One even told me, why would you say something like that? It makes you look bad. And in that moment, I realized that it wasn't just the one company that was toxic. The system itself rewarded silence and it punished integrity. You know, they say the tallest trees, it catches the most wind. So the higher you will grow, the more pushback you will face. But let me tell you something. Bending to avoid the wind is not the same as standing strong against the storm. So you should never ever, say sorry for standing your ground. Because here's the truth. You're never not good enough. You're never a misfit. You're simply too big for the small spaces they try to keep you confined in. And I am a hero because I have survived. And you can be too. And this is just an interval. Best part of the story is yet to come. So thank you so much for listening to me.